And while you're at it, click on your like, share, and subscribe buttons. So today we have a wonderful guest. I'm excited to speak with her, Angela Anderson. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm back.
Woo! She kind of disappeared on us for a second there.
I did. I did. You know, Zoom and all these things, all these technical things. So, but we're here now, and that's all that matters, right?
That's right. Woo woo. Yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Angela?
Oh, cool. Okay. So I don't really use a lot of labels, but I realized that in order to connect people to what it is that I do, I have to come up with something that steers people in a direction, right? And so I call myself a quantum energy alchemist is what I call myself because I really work with energy across the board. I use the name or the moniker Andena Sananda Kumara. That is my spiritual name. That was given to me from my guidance, like dropped in my lap from my guidance. And I was instructed to use that name because it carries a frequency, and it's the frequency that I am here to hold and embody within this physical plane. So I'm to use that name. So that's why in some places you'll see me as Angela, because there are people who will always and forever know me as Angela. And that's how they've come to know me. That's the role that I play. But there's also a greater aspect to me that is Andona Sananda Kumara, which embodies the multidimensional aspect, all of me, the full depth and breadth of me that we bring to the table. And so I do whatever is necessary. I guess I could say this is why I call myself a quantum energy alchemist, because I feel like that's an umbrella term that's kind of encompassing of many things. So whether you're talking about the mediumistic type of work, or whether you're talking about the psychic type of work, or anything that falls under the realm of what do we want to call it, metaphysics, esoteric type of work, all of that stuff. I feel like quantum energy alchemist is all encompassing of all of that, because really what I do with people who come to see me and the groups that I work with is whatever is necessary for that particular energy dynamic, because everybody is different and every group brings a different set of energies to the table. And so it's like a big collaboration with my guidance. And so my guidance is always present. My body, I am so in tune, and I really can't tell you how exactly that kind of happened, but we have a very connected relationship. And so there's a book, Frances Key wrote a book series called the Team Books. And in that book, she mentions that your team is as close to you as breathing. And for me, this is absolutely true, because when I speak, if I ask a question, if I inquire, or if there is some level of guidance that they intend to give me, my body responds with a nod. Like literally all of me responds to them in that way, to that guidance in that way. So we are literally a team present. You see me, but we are fully encompassing of a team. Like, yeah, team working together. And so yeah, and so that's kind of what I do. So I've started.
It's kind of hard to explain, huh?
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit, right? And so what I've started to do, I've kind of now stepped into more of a let's see, more of a focused perspective on what it is that I am here to do and what it is that I am here to embody. And so I've been for quite a while producing videos to help bring us back into awareness of ourselves. And so what I realized, being so intuitively focused, like I have that logical side and I've done that work to kind of bring that into balance, but really I've carried a heavy creative aspect. Like that's been my dominant um, state of being for most of my life, that creative side of things. And so utilizing that to reach people in a way that moves them beyond the logical mind, because really we're here to evoke that heart response, because it's within the heart. It's from that heart space that change will take place. It won't happen by our logic collectively, right? It happens by virtue of getting ourselves within that heart space, within a balanced state of being, balancing the masculine and the feminine energy, the creative or intuitive side of things with the logic, marrying that up together and allowing ourselves to sit within that heart space. But you got to get connected to that heart space. And so everything that I do, everything that I produce is intended to evoke a heart level response. And so if you approach most of my work, if you approach it from your logical mind, it's going to bypass you every time. But if you take that breath, like I always say, and draw yourself down into the space of the heart, you will allow yourself to feel on many levels what it is that I do, what it is that I am here to embody, what it is that we collectively as a team are here to evoke and spark remembrance of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to let the audience know, just before we started this video, she did. What was it exactly you did? You did like a calming. You collected the heart and you cleared the
So
room.
yeah, so my guidance, like they're always like, you got to get connected first. You just can't start something up, spur of the moment. You really have to bring people together and make sure that there's that reflected connection, that connectedness within the space. You are creating a sacred space when we do anything that involves bringing others into greater levels of awareness. You have to make sure that everybody involved is connected on one accord, ultimately, right? And so whenever I meet with anybody, whenever I do any interview or anything, the first thing we're going to do is get connected from the level of heart, because that helps, number one, settle the individuals present and bring them together on one accord, but it also assists in settling and harmonizing the space in order to solidify the sacredness of the space. It's like you're creating a sacred circle, like around a campfire or something like that, to come together to do something sacred.
Yeah. And it was really cool because when she was done, it's like my hands started tingling and it just like I was so relaxed. It's like, oh, I don't know if I could do this interview now because I'm just so relaxed. I'm just like, oh, I'm melting in my chair. It felt really good.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
So Angela, can you tell us some stories of some things that's happened to you? Some exciting experiences that happened to you? If you could give us a visual of what that was like.
Oh, well, okay. So there are many things. And so um, I'll summarize and then I'll go into something specific. And so I'll say, all of my life has been a lesson in trust. Everything that's happened to me growing up till now has been an exercise in trust. And so I've had many experiences where I should have been hurt, harmed, or probably situations where I could have died, really. All of those instances have been lessons in trust, because in every one of those cases, did a voice speak to me. And when I was younger, I didn't know what that voice was. I just knew I heard a voice, and that voice would tell me to do something, and I wouldn't question it at all. I never hesitated in following the guidance that was given through that voice. I always listened to that voice. And so, growing up as a kid, I learned to ultimately trust that voice. And no matter what that voice said, I didn't have to rationalize it with my logical mind as I got to be an adult, because there's that tendency when somebody tells you to do something, you want to weigh it first before you surrender to it. No, by the time that I was an adult, when this voice spoke, I would always surrender to that voice. And so there was this time when I fell down the stairs. I always tell this story because this was one of the biggest events that happened. And all of these, when I look back on it, all of these events that happened could have been exit points for me to leave. They could have been exit points,
Oh
but
my
they weren't
goodness.
because I trusted the voice. And so as I was falling down the stairs, there was nothing to reach to grab onto. The stairwell was hardwood floors. It's about 20 steps, really high in my mom's house, and walls with no rails at all. And I realized I was falling from the very top step. I was falling from the very top step. And I think to myself, oh goodness, I'm falling, right? What can I do to help myself? That was the thought I had in a millisecond. And I sent that out. And that voice came and spoke right then. And that voice said, just reach out. And I didn't hesitate at all. I reached out like Superman, just like this. And the next thing I know, I black out and I'm placed at the bottom of the stairwell, looking back up the stairs. So I have no awareness of what happened in the between. I just know that I was placed at the bottom of the stairs looking back up the stairs and I didn't fall. My mom says she heard my body hit the floor and all that stuff.
Oh wow.
I didn't have a scratch, a scrape, or any broken bones, none of that. She came running down the stairs screaming because she thought I would have to go to the hospital right away. But none of that happened. I was totally fine sitting on my bottom looking back up the stairs. That
Wow.
was a level of trust that was established, but that lended itself to me always trusted my guidance because at that point I realized that they were actually present and helping me. And then it became this process of kind of um, moving more into that space, moving more into that space. But I didn't surrender fully to whatever that was because I didn't know at this point. I grew up in the church. That was the background that I had. And so I wasn't aware of that there was a space to walk into, if that makes sense, from the
Yeah.
spiritual perspective, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until I got a lot older, and there were many like similar incidents, like falling down the stairs, being in a tornado. There was one like that.
Oh
I
my
was in a
goodness.
tornado,
You need to talk
and
to my husband.
well,
He's a tornado chaser. He studies the weather and everything. So you would be good
oh,
to tell
okay.
your.
So
He would love your story. That's a different
yeah, let me tell
story.
this story. Okay. So like after I fell down the stairs, like I was in grad school by this time. And so I had been having these recurring dreams or nightmares at the time of myself being in a tornado. So I lived in Illinois at the time. And to get to Illinois from Mississippi, because that's where my family is from, you have to travel up Highway 55, I-55, to get to Illinois where we lived. And I would always have these dreams of this big tornado coming up I-55 headed toward Illinois. And I was somehow always in the path of this tornado and I would have to get out of the way. So once I was driving on the highway and my family and I were on the highway, we were in the path of this tornado. It didn't matter what it was. It was always some scenario of this tornado coming up I-55 and me being in the path of it, right?
All right.
So when my husband and we were dating at the time, we weren't married yet. I had gone out to see him at his apartment, and his apartment was at this junction point that was kind of like off of I-55 where it came to like a
Oh,
T,
jeez.
and his apartment was like very near that like junction point, that intersection. And so we were sitting in his apartment watching watching Green Mile and that design show Trading Spaces. And so during this time, we were like going back and forth, watching Trading Spaces and the Green Mile. And so I remember it started to rain, and then it started to storm a little bit, and I was sitting there, and I had this feeling. That it was about to storm, and we would get storms
Mm,
all the time with
mm-hmm.
random warnings and all that stuff in the Midwest. But the last time I switched back to network TV, which was the Green Mile was on network TV. As soon as I switched back to that channel, the screen went blue. And the guy came on the television and said, basically, if you can see this message, you need to take cover now. A tornado is on the ground and you need to take cover now. I've never seen a message like that. But
Oh my.
instantly, when that message played, I had a flashback of all those dreams I had
Mm-hmm.
had all those years before, because it was like 2 years worth of dreams. Like I would have that dream all the time, on and off, recurring dream.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
I got up off the couch and I went and looked out the window. And he lived, it was like a 3-story apartment building, and he lived on the third floor.
Oh,
I went and looked out the window, and there was this big lake in the middle of the apartment complex. And I had this vision when I looked out the window, I had this vision in my mind's eye of a tornado coming right across that lake toward us, like directly toward us.
uh-huh.
And I said, we have to go now. That's what I said. We have to go now. And so I grabbed my bag, grabbed my keys, and head out the door. And he was walking around the apartment so slow because, we would always have these random warnings, and he didn't take it seriously at all.
Oh
He never
no. Oh
took
no.
storms seriously. Like if there was a storm, he would actually get in bed and go to sleep,
Oh
right? Which is
no.
what he would have done had I not been there. But I said, we have to go now. And so the voice says, you're going to have to leave him. He's going too slow. You're going to have to leave him and go downstairs. You have to go now. And so I didn't even think twice. I grabbed my bag and I headed down the stairs and I said, baby, you better come on. I got to go. They said, I have to go now. And so I run downstairs and I get like almost to the basement level, and he's coming behind me. He's like halfway up the stairs, running behind me. By the time both of us get seated in the basement, in this little washroom, there's only like it's like closet size with just a washer and a dryer
Mm-hmm.
in this little washroom. By the time we get in there with the other tenants and sit down, there's like the walls start shaking and vibrating. There's this feeling of the air being sucked out like a vacuum, like you can't catch your breath. And
Oh.
all I remember was focusing on Jesus. That's who I knew, right? Jesus, Yeshua. That's what I call him now. But at the time, he was
Right.
Jesus for
Right.
me, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so I was just focused on him. I was focused on that presence, and I was just saying, I was just calling that name and focused on him. And within a matter of seconds, it seemed like a lifetime, but it was a matter of seconds. Everything was still. Everything was still. And so we get up and open the door of the washroom. When we opened the door of the washroom and turned the corner to head back upstairs out of the basement, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't very deep because it was like a shallow basement, like the front part was in the basement, the backside was exposed, right? When we
Okay.
when we walk out of the hallway and get ready to head up the stairs, we look up and nothing is there. All we saw was the starry night sky.
Oh my
That was
goodness.
it. Everything was
Oh
gone.
my.
Everything from the basement level, like the basement level first floor type of
Mm-hmm.
thing, everything above that was gone. Yeah. So if we had
Oh
waited
my
any
goodness.
longer, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here at all. And
It's a
so
good thing your boyfriend or husband now, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Good
yeah.
thing he followed you and didn't say, "Oh, I'll just go take a nap."
Right, right,
So
right.
he listened to
Yes.
you, or they pulled him along. Says you're coming with her.
Right.
You're not done with her yet.
Right, right. So yeah, so that level, that those are the type of things that happened throughout my life. It's like one incident would they would magnify. They were bigger and bigger incidents that would happen every time, and it was just an opportunity for me to develop trust. That's what I've seen in hindsight now. That's what I came to realize in hindsight. But that trust now is like unwavering because when it was time for me to step into this this state of being, then I knew to listen to that voice. And so I got married maybe a couple of years in, and we had gotten to a point where I was frustrated in marriage because, marriage is a great um, classroom because you have an opportunity to see yourself in reflection all the time, 24 hours a
Yeah.
day, right? So
Yeah.
by this time we had two kids and we had moved for jobs and all that stuff, and doing the typical stuff, go to work, come home, trying to make a life and all these things. And
Hmm.
I was at a point where I was frustrated because he had started to treat us not like a team or a partnership, but like a business. Did you do this? Did you do these things? I'm managing this. Very logical, right? And so I was very frustrated at that time. And I realized um, from my perspective that I was holding him to standards that weren't his. They were mine in association with things that I had picked up from my dynamic, the parents that I grew up with, right? I
Hmm.
carried
Right.
some of that stuff into the marriage. So he was reflecting back at me. I realized this, everything is kind of realized in hindsight. You don't realize it on the front end of those things, but you realize it in hindsight. But really, he was reflecting me back at me because I was trying to hold him to a standard that he couldn't live up to. And what I realized is I, we had never had an argument, but I was sitting and I was so angry with him. I found myself like superheated, and so as I started to speak to him, it was like these weather sirens went off, like those same weather sirens that sounded when the tornado came.
Right.
It was like I was hearing those in my head and something shifted. So as I'm speaking to him, it's like something snapped and I'm hearing these high pitched frequencies and I start to have a conversation with myself like as I'm having a conversation with him. So I'm having two simultaneous conversations at the same time. And I'm talking to myself saying, well, you know why this is happening. You know that life is a mirror and life is only reflecting you. So, what is this showing you about you? Because this is not about him, this is about you. And I heard it in a different way and I snapped, and that anger instantly dissipated. I instantly stopped talking to him, and it was like totally focused on myself. And what I realized is I wasn't allowing him to be himself. I was holding him to a standard of what I thought he had to be, what I thought he must be, based on my preconceived notions of what I believed a husband should be or what a husband had to be, rather than just letting him be who he is, right?
Yeah.
In
Right.
that moment, I realized I was holding him to that standard, but he was reflecting back at me that I wasn't standing in my truth. I wasn't being my authentic self. And it was at that point that I made a decision that I had to own me. I had to put all the other stuff aside, all the beliefs that I had, and discover who I was. And so by this time, I had started watching Karen Swain's show, The Inner Sanctum.
I
She's
haven't
on
seen
YouTube.
it. Okay.
Yeah, I started watching her shows, and she's a spiritual teacher. She teaches the New World teachers, as she calls it. But I started watching her shows and I was really learning a lot. And I realized that she had a private group that she had that people would meet and just kind of share their stories and stuff. And so my guide said, join that group. And I was my first response, this was the first time I think I was like, no, like I'm not joining that group. Like everybody's gonna think I'm crazy. Like my husband is gonna think I'm nuts if I hook up with this group. I'm not joining that group. And so that was the first time. And then they came back again, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later, join the group, connect with the group. You got to join the group. And so I finally, after going back and forth with it, I finally decided to join the group. And when I did, when I signed up for the subscription, I could feel my guides like having a party. It was like so much joy and elation because it was like this feeling, this instant knowing that they had gotten me over the hump. Like this life, I finally got over the hump. She finally did it. All right, she's
Nice.
finally about to walk into what we came here to do. And from that point,
Nice.
did I start to just open up. So when I first joined her group, I didn't say a word. I was the fly on the wall. I didn't say anything. It was like I couldn't, I was just taking it all in. I didn't share anything at all. It took me a while to get to a point where I could share with the group, but I took everything in and I just started
Nice.
to open up and grow, open up and grow. And one day, Karen says, "Okay, we're going to put you in the hot seat." Because
Oh,
like if you were a spiritual teacher or in the metaphysical space, if you're intuitive, if you're truly genuinely intuitive, you can connect with a person and you can see what's around that person, the power that they have, the guidance that they have, right? And so
right.
she was like, she could see it. So she put me in the hot seat and said, "Okay, you're gonna channel for the group." And I was like, "What? I've never channeled. I've never channeled before. I haven't even channeled for myself. All I had ever done was some automatic writing, right? At this
Right.
point."
Okay.
And so she said, "No, you're gonna take some questions from the group and you're gonna bring through a response." And my guide said, be scared and do it anyway. Be afraid and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. So I was like, okay, we just gonna surrender and do it anyway. And so that day, she put me in a hot seat and she starts asking these questions. And what do I feel but this rush of energy
Oh,
just come out of nowhere? And I'm like, what is that? It's this energy coming through. And as she asks these questions, it's like these words start to come out of my mouth and I don't know where they're coming from, but I'm just speaking and sharing all this stuff for whatever question everybody asks. I have a response, and I don't even know where this response is coming from. And so that's kind of how it really got going. Like when I really started
wow.
to move into that space. And so when I realized what was happening, then it was like, okay, now you have to share your story. So I started sharing videos. I came out of the closet, out of the woo woo closet to my husband because I never had. I had never
Oh.
shared with him anything. My kids
Oh.
always, my kids always knew because I never shielded them from anything. I always shared with them and I always talked to them about different things and I always listened if they told me they saw something and that kind of thing. So
Right.
they
Right.
like they were straight. He didn't know anything. I didn't tell him anything about that side of my life. And so when I realized what was happening and what I was moving into, I was like, now I have to tell him because I'm about to share these videos and share with the world. And so I did. And I knew in my mind, this was in my mind, as soon as I tell him, he's gonna be like, well, I'm out. That's just too weird. I'm done. I can't handle that. That was what I thought would happen. And when I told him, he said, "Well, I guess we'll just figure it out." And I was
Oh,
like,
awesome.
"Okay, like I
Awesome.
guess we'll just figure it out." And so it's been this process since then of us figuring it out. We don't have everything figured out. Everything is not perfect, it's not perfect, but it's this process where number one, we've always been a great team and we continue to
Hmm.
be a great team, but now
Right.
it's this coming to know one another on different levels because I'm not the same person at all that I was at all. I'm a completely different
Right.
person, taking on new energies and all these things,
Right.
walking in a completely different space, but it works. We found a way to make it work through all those challenges, and so he's gotten to a space where he's made peace with who I have become, right?
Right.
And I've allowed him to be, I've stepped back and threw my hands up and said, you know what? It's not my place to tell somebody who they have to be. It's my place to allow everybody around me to be their authentic their authentic selves as I am my authentic self. And so that is what we have come here to do. That is the work. That is the overarching umbrella um, aspect or thing that we've come here to teach or remind, not necessarily teach, I won't say teach, but help us come into remembrance of the importance of standing in your truth, embodying your truth, walking in your full soul aligned authenticity. Yeah,
Yeah.
within this physical space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of answers one of my questions I had, but I have two quick questions for you. Hopefully, they're quick. Um,
Okay.
One, when you were little and you were listening to the voices and doing everything that the voices were telling you to do, did you have to go against your parents? And how did that work?
I never had to go against my parents,
Okay.
but I didn't have them available as a source that I could speak to, right? I never confided in my dad. I really don't understand why. I don't think I was supposed to because I think there was something in my maternal lineage that I came to assist in the resolution of. There was an energy that I came to assist in the resolution of. So I would always go to my mom and ask or to try and explain things that I saw or ask questions about spiritual things that I saw, I would always go to her. But she had such a fear of those things that she would always shut down. And I eventually shut down because she wouldn't receive, you know, what I had to say, or
Gotcha.
she would kind of discount it. But there was something on that side of the lineage that I came to um, resolve in that respect. What I
Nice.
realized since I've gotten older is that my dad was quite open.
Oh,
My
so you
dad
went to
was
the
quite,
wrong one.
yeah. Well, I don't that well, it's there is no right or wrong, but
Right, right.
I'm saying I went to that side because there was something else that I was there to resolve in that side of my lineage that I have
Yeah.
since resolved, right? That I've done the work to resolve in that space. There was something there. It was a
That's
reason because
awesome.
I asked myself this same question all the time because they divorced and I stayed with my mom rather than staying with my dad. And I would sometimes ask myself what would have happened if I had gone and lived with my dad. But my dad had gotten so into the church. He was all about, like, he was a deacon in the church and doing all these things that I don't know how that would have fleshed itself out, but I know there is no right and wrong. Ultimately, everything happens the way that it's supposed to happen.
Right,
And so I
right.
made the choice that I was supposed to make and took the route that I was supposed to take in order to end up right where I am now, right?
It's
Right
it's
where I am
crazy, but
now.
I get ya.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, the second question, we have just a couple more minutes here before we're shut down. But anyways, I wanted to ask real quick how your husband felt if when you're running and telling I'm leaving without you, with or without you, and did he have a clue about what was going on around that
He
time?
had no clue.
No
He
clue.
had no clue. He had no clue. He said, but he learned that he swears that I saved his life because he would have been asleep. He would have been asleep in bed had I not been there and had he not come down the stairs. So yeah, that was a whole thing. So he's learned to listen to my little rants and inklings and nudges and all those things. He's learned to kind of surrender to that because it's
Right,
something to it, right?
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, I so appreciate you being on the show with us today and talking about some
Oh,
of your exciting stories. Those are pretty cool
oh.
stories. Those are
Thank
awesome.
you.
Those are
Thank you.
awesome. But yeah, if yeah, it was so cool. So thank you so much again for being on the
Absolutely.
show. And if anybody out there in the audience would love to have your stories on the show, if you have any, get a hold of me. Let's get you on the show. Email lighttalk423@gmail.com. And we'll see you all later. Till
All
next
right.
time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
Of
for
course.
having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Awesome. Bye.